So good to have you, Kasia. I'm so happy
Yeah,
that
thank
you.
you for having me, Lucas. Awesome to be here.
Mm. So the purpose of this podcast is really to inspire entrepreneurs and to show like solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, or in your case, a coach who have built their own business, who've gone through the tribulations of building their business, and kind of to get a little bit of an inside view on them, like how was the journey, what helped you, what beliefs have shaped you. So I'm really curious to just pick your mind and just explore, and anything else you can share with us. And yeah, I know you're a super inspiring person. Like I wrote, every time I talk to you, I feel super inspired, and I just love your energy of contribution. And I think that's just beautiful. And I'm very
Thank
honored that you're coming to my podcast today.
you. Yeah, thank you so much. That's so sweet.
So,
Awesome.
so maybe you can give us a little bit of an intro to what you're currently doing, and yeah, so we get the picture, let's say.
Yeah, of course, sure. So yeah, I'm interested to dive into this because as I was kind of getting grounded for this last night, I was just like, I started as an entrepreneur, not even knowing that I was doing it because I was a corporate entrepreneur for so many years. So
Mm.
I had my own thing going on the side while I had a very thriving corporate career. And but there was just this piece of me that was not being actualized in what I was doing in corporate. Although towards I guess probably the last 5 years of that career, I was able to bring more of me into it and bring some of the things that I now do in business as a coach. But yeah, essentially, I really got into personal development. Oh my goodness, probably in my mid to late 20s, I started
Mhm.
to read some of my first personal development books. And there was just something about that genre of books that just really spoke to me. And I just like I could get enough. I couldn't get enough. But I think at that point I was still, in that phase of just reading a lot, not
Mhm.
maybe applying so much, but
Mhm.
just really consuming a lot. So I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing. And I was having all these aha moments, and then I was like on to the next book and then on to the next book. And then when I went through a big transition in my life, when like my son was born, and then I left his father when he was about a year and a half. We separated. So there was just a lot going on in my life. And that's when um, I really took not so much more into the reading, but now I'm like, okay, something's got to give because now I have all this awareness. And I
Mhm.
think that's what led to the transition and making the decisions that I made. Because I now was in the awareness of I'm recreating some toxic patterns from childhood and stuff is happening. And, my son is going to be raised in an environment that I wasn't proud of. And so I also realized that it's up to me if I want to make a change. And for whatever reason, I didn't feel like staying in that marriage had the space for me to do the growth, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I'm not saying that nobody can grow if they are not in an ideal situation, but I just didn't believe that it was going to be possible in that way. So for me, it was the decision that I needed to exit. And so I did, and then I went to work and I started hiring coaches and I saw counselors, I went to therapy, and through it all I just really connected with coaching. That seemed to have been the thing that
Mhm.
moved me forward the most.
Mhm.
And I also always had a passion for health, fitness in particular, fitness, nutrition. I just was very conscious of this. Again, it was born out of my own journey. I had an eating disorder for 12 years. So that was kind of like, like we gravitate towards the things that will help us figure out our own stuff. And
Yeah.
so why I share this is because when I started in coaching, I first started looking at that nutrition and fitness space. So I got certified in nutrition. I got certified as a nutrition coach. Then I
Mhm.
got certified as a functional strength coach. That really supported, those aspects of life. And then eventually I got certified as a life coach. And then putting all of that together, um, like it molded over time. So I started kind of in that fitness and health space. And then as I worked through and I started working with people, I really realized, and for myself too, that it's really the mental game that we gotta win at. We gotta win at the mental game. We gotta win at the emotional game. And that's what's going to have long-lasting results, whether that's our health, whether that's our money, whether that's our relationships. So that's the space that I'm in. So I focus on life and empowerment coaching. And yeah, that's kind of a it's kind of a long background to that.
Wow, that's beautiful. Okay. So you say you started out in the corporate but you felt like there was some piece of you that you couldn't bring into that world, right? So you were looking for something else to express yourself, maybe. I mean, that's my words for it, right? But
Yeah. And really finding myself, like I had a
mhm,
conversation not that long ago with a good friend of mine, and we really exploring the corporate setting right now, trying to
mhm,
see if, how to bring these ways of thinking, this coaching, the transformation into the corporate setting. Um, but yeah, like I didn't know who I was, like at that
mm,
pivotal transitional moment, I didn't know who I was. And so I wasn't really bringing myself to work because it was still playing the game in corporate of like, who do they need me to be?
mhm,
And that's how I show up, right? So you start to feel the incongruence of like who you are as a person. I went to school to be an accountant. So, I mean, very left brain, pragmatic, approach to things. And my boss at the time, I worked under her for a decade, and she used to always say to me, she's like, "You're not a typical accountant." And in the beginning, I was really nervous when she would make comments like that, like I felt threatened.
mhm, mhm.
And then over time, as I started doing my work, I was like, "Thank you," you know. But it took a minute
Mm,
because initially it was fear. It was like, oh my God, am I going to lose my job? Like all this stuff that we make up in our own minds that is not even true. But yeah.
and that you mentioned an important kind of transition where you said you had your son was born, and when he was, I think, 1.5 years old, you left his father. Is that correct? So,
Mhm.
so what gave you kind of the and like coming from a similar situation myself, I know
Mhm.
that like that's never an easy decision to make that, but what
Mhm.
gave you kind of the clarity or the strength to make that decision? Like how did that happen? If you want to go there, how did that happen for you?
Um, so I kind of knew that it wasn't a great, like we were both, I saw an amazing reel the other day, and I was just like, oh my God, I think somebody sent it to me and then I sent it to everybody. But it was one of those things. Basically the woman was saying that I never speak badly about my ex-husband.
Yeah.
And that's because I was a vibrational match for him when we met. And so because I started to read so much and really explore and start to get the awareness, I started to see things in a very different way.
Mm,
And basically, this maybe sounds woo-woo, whatever, but I got to the point where I'm just like, this isn't a match. Like
mhm,
I just felt like I was living in this prison, like I couldn't be self-expressed, and there's so many confines on me. And then, there was an element of emotional abuse too. And so I'm like, this isn't it. Like, this isn't it
mm,
for me. So it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I still, like when I think about the hard things I've done, and I've done a lot of hard things, that I was so scared. Like I honestly had really limiting beliefs and even my family, would say that to me, like, what are you going to do? How are you going to do this on your own? You're not going to be able to do this on your own. Your husband's going to be okay. You're not going to be okay. And I'm like, so I had all these voices coming at me. And yet there was something inside me that was like, no, no, I can do this. And I have to do this. Like it wasn't even an option. So it was just like, you start to get like little whispers, and then eventually it's a really loud voice. It's like, yeah. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but.
mhm. Yeah, no, thank you for going there. Okay, so something shifted in you through reading all these books. Like,
Mhm.
What happened there? I mean, you hinted at it. You said there was this awarenesses and you learned all these things. And in the beginning, it was inspiring you, but then
Mhm.
eventually you came to a point where you felt that it was time to actually start doing what you were reading about. So,
Yeah, so I do a lot of like in my work, I do transformation. Like I focus on
mhm,
transformation. And one thing that I wasn't aware then at that point is that everything that we play out in life is pretty much what we've been programmed with roughly between the ages of 0 to 7 years old, unless we've had other traumatic experiences after that, then also
mhm,
those play a role. Um, so when I had the awareness and before I made the decision, the biggest one was, like I always say, it was like this cloud lifted and all of a sudden I could see every pattern that this of the dysfunction of my childhood home playing out now in my marital home. So that was the biggest thing. And I'm like, this is not okay. And the biggest thing, because again, my son was already
mhm,
here, I'm like, this is not okay. I do not want my son to grow up with this and then have to figure it out as an adult. Like, I'm committed to giving him a childhood he's not going to have to recover from to the best of my ability. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I had big awarenesses of what the toxic patterns that were repeating already and the environment that the chaotic environment that he was already
mhm.
growing up with in when he was little. So that was probably one of the biggest ones.
Wow. Mhm. Wow, that sounds like a huge motivation to, yeah, like I can feel when you talk about it. And I mean, me
Yeah.
myself being a father, I can relate to yeah, to what you're saying. Thank you. Okay, something that I want to come back to that I'm really curious about is you mentioned the fitness and the nutrition, and but then
Yes.
you also mentioned the winning the mental and the emotional game. And
Yes.
so a question that comes up for me is how, and I'm curious, what do you have to say to that? How do you think about the connection between those? Because you have an experience of obviously with the nutrition, with the fitness, with the body part, but also now you say you focus on helping people to win the mental game. So how are those connected for you? What's your take on this?
So basically, until we win the mental game,
Mhm.
we're not going to create the results consistently in the areas of life that we're after. And that's why we see people on diets, you know, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight, because they're focusing on the mechanics and they're focusing on counting and restricting. And we can be disciplined in that way for short periods of time, but it's not a lasting change because we haven't changed through that. We can change the exterior, but we're not changing what's driving the behaviors. And
Mhm.
what's driving the behaviors is our programming and our mindset. Same with money, that like I always say to my clients, I'm like, if you want something fun to watch, go and YouTube and look up the lottery winners who lost it all. It's the same thing. It's some 99% of people who win lottery lose their money and are actually more broke after than they were before they won the money. And again, it's because their identity can't hold it and the mindset isn't there. Our identity doesn't match. And so that's why now I don't focus on weight and wealth so much with clients, although those are beautiful byproducts when they work with me. They
Mhm.
inevitably lose weight, even though it never comes up. Uh, they get themselves in better financial situations. Their relationships are thriving because they are showing up different. They're thinking different. They see things different.
Mhm.
So that's why. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. So would you say lasting change when you define the winning the mental game and the emotional game? So how do you define that? What does that mean to you, winning those games?
We really got to look at we really got to look at what belief systems we hold,
Hmm.
um, and see which ones are working for us, which ones are not, and rewriting the ones that are not working. So depending on which books you read and who you listen to, some people say it's your limiting beliefs, some people call it your paradigm. Bob Proctor is famous for calling it your paradigm. And I know when I was a new immigrant, I'm like, what does that word mean? And I could never, like, it took me years to understand. Like, what are these big words in these books, you know? But yeah, so it's just because again, like everything that's present, like if we look at our external circumstances right now, the house you live in, the health, the body that you're in, how you feel physically, it's a reflection of the beliefs we hold right now today.
Yeah, I love Bob Proctor. Like
Mm-hmm.
seeing what he did, where he started with actually he was a cleaning guy, which is funny because
Yeah.
Anthony Robbins he also worked in cleaning for some time, right? So you have
Yeah.
these, and then they both became hugely successful. And I actually saw Bob Proctor when he was in Vienna, and he was like above 80. It was some years ago, but he was very energetic, and I was like, wow,
Yes.
you know, this guy,
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So so the beliefs and changing the belief systems and awareness. So what would you say is the most effective way to do that? Is that coaching or is that like what yeah, what do you say to that? What are the modalities that you introduce to people, or is it would you tell people, hey, you should read? Like if somebody's listening now, they're an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
they're like, okay, yeah, I have some blocks. I don't really know what exactly these blocks are. Maybe they have
Mm-hmm.
some in their business that are blocking the financial flow, let's say. Maybe they have it in their private life in some other part, whatever the focus is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what would you say to them?
Yeah, we really, I always say working with somebody is the fastest way. Like if you're really committed to making a shift in some, making a shift in some area of your life, and nothing is exclusive to other things. Like if something isn't working great, nothing else is working optimally because
Mm.
there is an energy drain, on the thing that's really taxing you. So if it's your money, if it's your relationship, if it's your kids, if it's your health, like if that's really taxing your bandwidth, then nothing else is working optimally anyway.
Mm.
So I say like the fastest way to move through is to work with somebody for sure. Now, I used to poo-poo on therapy a lot, especially talk therapy, but I
Mhm.
think that field is changing, and I think, that there is a lot more awareness that talk therapy, especially just talking about your past, is not going to fix anything. In fact, it will just recreate more of that. So I still am a fan of coaching. Like to me, that is the favorite. And even when I look at therapists, I look for therapists who also are coaches
Mhm.
or who have the understanding of that way of working with people. It's again, I just see the proof of it over and over again. So whether that's, people who I've worked like I coaches always move me the furthest. And
Mhm.
I've worked with counselors, like I mentioned, therapists. And coaching has always moved me farther, quicker.
Uh-huh.
So that's still what I choose to invest money in for myself. In terms of if somebody's just exploring, if you're just new, find an area first of all that you're looking to shift, and then look for recommendations. Like, I mean, shit, we've got the internet now. It will tell you the best 10 books in that area, pick one and then go deep with it. I think that's something that I really grabbed onto. And Bob Proctor, I think that probably that's who I heard it from. Study the book you're reading, because in the study, you will start to connect to who you are. Because again, we're to know what beliefs are driving you and to know which beliefs we need to change, we get to figure out who am I, like what triggers me, what pisses me off, where do I fly off the handle, like where do I take offense when people speak to me. That's all showing you some wounds and some belief systems that you have that are not working for you. Because if you're
Mhm.
constantly offended, if I say, like you shared with me that, I hope you don't mind me sharing, but like when your friend said to you something about your t-shirt, right? You
Uh-huh.
can go into defense and you can get
Yeah.
defensive and pissed off and like argue it, right? Or you can go, huh, maybe there is something in here. Let me sit with this. That's a very different response.
Mm.
But you see people getting defensive all the time. And so I mean, first clue is like if you're somebody who is defensive, start looking at that because that's not working for you for sure. You
Mm,
know,
mm,
road rage. If you have road rage, that's not working for you. We get to start connecting to like, okay, what's under, because it's not the person who just cut you off or flipped you off in traffic. It's something that you're thinking and then a byproduct of that you're feeling that is causing
mm.
you to have road rage. So it's like, okay, well, what is this about? We need to go on a self-discovery journey. That's where it's got to start.
Wow, and that's beautiful. I mean, you pack quite a few things in there because I mean, I'll just say that there's people who are at a level of perception where, if something happens to them, they are like, hey, this is this person's fault, and it's completely external, which takes
Hmm.
away kind of their ability to actually change that as long as you're in that. But
Yeah.
what you're saying is to actually look at those triggers and then be like, okay, how and there's also the whole thing with, okay, this is my temperament, right? If you have a certain trait, or like you're not good with money, okay, no, I'm just not good with money, let's say, or no, and this never works for me, or something like that, which is coming back to beliefs, I guess, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's how it's all connected. But you're saying it's really about looking at studying yourself, kind of. You're studying a book, but by studying the
Hmm.
book, by going deep with something, you're getting to know yourself and your own triggers. And then
Hmm.
below those triggers, there are some beliefs that are actually triggering you. Because if you wouldn't have those beliefs, you wouldn't be triggered in the first
Oh,
place, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah, and something important you said too, like when you just were giving the example of like, I'm not good with money. That's actually a beautiful place for people. Even if you don't have a book, start paying attention to your own language. That will reveal a lot in itself. Anything that you put after the words I am, because we talk about ourselves all the time. So, and we'll say that, I used to, this is, I'm like, I can't believe I'm going to share this, but I'm gonna And I because when my clients come to work with me, I have them sign a waiver like before they invest that I'm
Mhm.
not here to be your friend. I have a harsher approach because again, I don't believe that just co-signing people's victim stories is going to move them forward. So I love my clients and I sometimes they don't like me. Or I just tell them there might be there might be times where they don't like me. And so I just want them to know that up
Yeah.
front. And so sometimes, I get harsh. And so I don't say this to them, but I say it to a friend of mine who she's also in this space. And I said, oh my God, I'm such an asshole sometimes. And then, and then I really caught myself the other day and I'm like, I'm not an asshole. I'm an amazing coach and I stand for my people. But it's, do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's so
Mm.
automatic for us. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, we really have to pay attention. Our words create. So what we put out there, it's so powerful. And so even if nobody's reading a book, start looking at what follows your I am or I'm this and what are you believing about yourself? And again, is it serving you or is it not serving you?
And so when you go through that process, and you've been on that journey for quite some time now, right? So you have a
Mhm.
business now, you have a certain level of success that you've built up, right? So what what was the process there? Did you examine your beliefs and then you inserted new ones? Like, did you create the new beliefs, or were those kind of did that happen organically, or how? And also, I'm curious, what are those beliefs? Like, if you look at yourself right now, like, what are the beliefs that reinforce an abundant reality, or even the reality that you've created in areas of your life where you're really happy with it?
Yeah, so it is a process, like this is the deeper work that we get to do, whether with ourselves or with somebody. Again,
Mm.
um, I say if somebody is committed to faster, do it with somebody who knows the steps because the saddest thing that I find is like people do get committed and they're afraid to invest. They don't feel themselves worthy to invest in themselves, or they don't trust because maybe they've invested previously and it didn't
Yeah.
work. Because again, not every coach, not every therapist is made equal. Let's face it, right?
Mm.
Just like I always said, you have doctors who graduated from university with 90% average, and then you have doctors who graduated with 60. So you're just picking your battles
Mm.
here. But it's the deeper work because we have to, when we're looking at the stories that we tell ourselves, because beliefs in stories, like we live in stories, right? So we tell ourselves a story. We have to figure out where it came from. Is it even ours? Did I learn this from my, like, so my mom, for example, used to always say, I'm not good in math. Well, guess what I used to do for the longest time? I would just say, I'm not good at math. My dad was excellent at math. I'm like, why didn't I pick my dad? Well, he didn't say it out loud. I didn't hear it,
Oh.
right? So again, when we're little, our subconscious mind just accepts everything that's going on. So everything that we hear, see, smell, touch, right? Like we're being programmed. And I mean, we're programmed all the time now too. But now, because we have fully developed brains, we can reason with the programming. But when we're young, we don't reason with the programming, so we accept certain things as our own that aren't necessarily ours. So yeah, I would love to give you an answer, but like this is where, like this is where the deeper work comes in, because we first of all have to connect to, where did this come from? Is this mine? Is it somebody else's? And then it's really simple, because once we get to the awareness of where it came from, is it mine? Do I want to keep it? Well, then we got to rewrite it. And guess what? It's only by repetition that it changes. It's by either doing something differently over a period of time, by, again, checking out internal self-talk, right? Because that's a big thing. Like what I hear from clients a lot is the negative self-talk that they're spinning in. And again, we don't hear this. So we have to extrapolate that. Like, again, if you're working with somebody, they'll extrapolate it out of you, or you got to do it with yourself, where you have to connect. But I guess what I'll say, because it's coming to me right now, is like you have to be so honest with yourself. And I think that that's the hardest part for a lot of people, is to have that brutal honesty with self. But if we don't go there, then we can't change what we don't acknowledge.
What do you think is keeping people from being honest with themselves?
I think it could be a number of things. I think it's fear. Because again, when we shift, there is a fear, like most people have a big fear of rejection, right? Like that's just humans beings. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to be alone. So I think that we pretend so that we don't get kicked out of the tribe, so to speak, right? So I think that, because I mean, it's not easy. Anytime you make a big leap, it's not easy. Like there are lumps that you're gonna take from, whoever, and most of the time it's from the people who are the closest to you, which is hard,
So you're talking about this deeper work. I want to go into that a little more. So in my mind, I was like, yeah, okay, we have the beliefs, and then you're tempted to think about it like, oh, you have this list of beliefs, and these are your old beliefs, and you kind of identify them, and then you create kind of a new list, and then you repeat them to yourself. I'm not saying anything against that, by the way. I'm just saying like that's a simplified picture that I have in my mind, and then you just repeat those and you reprogram yourself. But what you're saying is, no, you have to actually look at where they came from and really identify that and get an awareness. Is that even from me? Was that even my own thought? Did I get that from, like in your case with the math, it was a belief you picked up from your mother, right? Which you could, at the same time, you could have picked up a belief from your father who was good at math, right? But for some reason, and you said because she was talking about it, picked it up from her. And then going into the awareness, okay, and do you actually want to keep that, and then rewriting it through repetition? So, I mean, Bob Proctor talks a lot about this, right? The repetition and always listening again to books or to information that is going to help you. But why is it so important? I'm asking myself to find out where they came from. Like, what's the thing with that?
Because then you really get to understand that, you can change the perspective of it. So when we know where it came from, we can give it a different interpretation. You can now give it an interpretation from your reasoning mind. You can also, I don't do inner child work a lot, but I know people who that's all that they do is inner child work. And I think that there is a very valuable component to that because inevitably, like I don't know how you find like in your circles and the people that you've worked with, but I've worked with a lot of people who just come, they're so resigned, they're like, well, my parents were like this, so I'm like this, and that's how it is. But there is a piece of like understanding that's missing. It's like, well, your parents were like this and my parents were like this because, they came through, an upbringing of sorts, right?
Mm.
So we can, when we go back and we understand where these things come from, we can give it a different interpretation and we stop identifying. It's, we can release it as part of our identity. And really, this whole thing is about your new identity has to match the results that you want. So this going deeper like that allows you to change the interpretation. It even allows you to change the interpretations of, events that have happened. Like I often use the example of, it's just a stupid example, but it illustrates it well. It's, how beliefs, right? So say you're married to somebody and you believe your spouse is faithful. That's your belief.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come home one day and they're in bed with another person. What happens to your belief?
Crumbles, yeah.
It's in a second, it's gone. So we form beliefs because we think we saw something. In this case, and the example that I'm sharing is like you saw something. So, okay, like it changed, how you think about this and the belief that you maybe had around that. But oftentimes we didn't see anything. When I was a little kid, I didn't see that I was stupid. I didn't see that I was stupid. Maybe somebody called me stupid, but I didn't see it. So how did I form the belief? I formed the belief because I made something up about it.
Mm.
So that's why it's important to get to the source. And again, like we always say, we got to work at the root. I don't know who says it in there. Maybe it's Napoleon Hill. You change the roots, you change the fruits, or something like that. I can't remember.
Oh, that's a catchy one. I like that.
Yeah. So I made none of this up. I always say I'm like, and I've read so many books at this point in my life. I can't quote properly, but I just say it's not mine. I didn't make it up.
That's like the general copyright insulation. You quoting something, but you're like,
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I like that about the context. So it helps you to recontextualize and reframe what is happening and to disidentify from it. That's a very smart way of approaching it. Okay, I'm curious a little bit about, I usually ask some questions. One is how you got started on the entrepreneurial journey. I mean, we went over that, but the second one is what does it mean for you to be an entrepreneur right now? And then also, what is your vision if you look like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years into the future with your work? Like, where do you see it going? What's the impact?
Yeah, beautiful questions. So I think at this point that I've been 100% only on the entrepreneurial journey. I'm out of the corporate space. Entrepreneurship to me just means freedom. I think that, like it's freedom and it's service. So those are definitely the two that come to mind. In terms of a larger vision, I've been rewriting my vision a lot. That's actually one of the first things I do with clients too, is having a strong vision. It's so important. At this point, I understand the impact of me working with just one client, how many other lives are impacted. And I hear this from them all the time, my family, my kids, my spouses, people that I work with. So the ripple is big. So never underestimate the impact we have on one person. And so my vision is to impact 1,000 women a year. I mostly work with women. I mean, if men come to me, I'm happy to impact them too. But impact 1,000 women a year, and by creating by impacting 1,000 women a year, that's going to be like 10x, because they're gonna, if they at least impact one person, and I know that their shift impacts more than one person in their life. And in terms of business, I'm very passionate about health and fitness and sport, and I've been very fortunate to have my son participate in whatever. I never chose his activities for him. He chose for himself. But I just see the gift of kids participating in team learning, those relational skills, exploring their creativity. And so my 5-year goal is to have a foundation where I can sponsor a boy and a girl, and to pick something of their choosing, and then also support the family, because it's not, as I was kind of thinking about this vision, I'm like, well, it's well beyond just paying the fees and all of that stuff. There is a huge time commitment. I mostly raised my son on my own, and so he used to dance competitively, hip hop, and he plays football now at a higher level. And so there is a huge time commitment on parents. And sometimes when we're, especially, if there is a financial strain, it's like parents feel like they can't take time away because they have to work to provide and feed and stuff. So really just looking at supporting the whole family so that these kids can have a journey and these parents can be present for those experiences with them. So, and the reason why too is because, so this is like, this is see, understanding your people, like your life and interpretations. My brother played hockey and my mom was never present. My dad was present, but for whatever reason, my brother is almost 42 and he still is so hurt that she wasn't present. He's not doing the work. So, I mean, I hope that one day he can change the interpretations of that. But there is a really deep wound. But I also, see through the kids who have the support, they just thrive different. So yeah, it's kind of a big, big vision.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, one can see that it's inspired through your own story. Like there are some pieces in there where you're like wanting to give. So when you talk about the vision, you say that's one of the first things that you do when you work with a client. So let's say somebody maybe they listen to this and they're playing with the idea of starting a business. Maybe they hear you talk about, you're running a business, the freedom, and they're kind of attracted to that idea. Maybe they're still in corporate and they're just toying with the idea, or maybe somebody has already started it. So what about the vision part? What would you advise somebody, or what are the steps for somebody to move or to crystallize that vision? Is that something they do on a Sunday? They sit down and write that, or is that better done with another person? Or what is if you want to share your process or your approach to that?
Yeah, you can 100% do it by yourself. I think that when it comes to vision, it's a great way to actually do it in quiet. So like if you can give yourself a good amount of time, because this is, again, you're not gonna slap a vision on a piece of paper in 10 minutes. Like that's just not gonna happen. It could be a very first, rough draft, but I will tell you, I rewrite my vision all the time, because it's constant, it's shifting and evolving. So it's a living thing. But before we even get to vision, and this is a really hard question for most people to answer based on my experience, is taking just a blank piece of paper and writing, what do I want at the top, and then setting a timer for at least 10 minutes and just go and start writing. Literally, you're just asking yourself that question, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? It's really powerful if you can do that exercise with another person, because when we do it in partnership, like in partners, when I do it in dyads in my program, when somebody is firing the question at you, eventually it moves you out of your thinking brain quicker, and moves you into your heart faster. So that's when the real stuff keeps coming out, because again, a lot of people can like live from the neck up. So we're disconnected. And so until you really truly connect to what do you truly want, not what mom and dad want you to want, what your husband wants you to want, your wife wants you to want, what your boss wants, like you got to get to what do you want. And so that process in itself takes a little bit of time. And sometimes people get, stuck just on that exercise alone. And then once you get to some clarity there, then you really want to connect to why is that important. So you just said that, how I share, like, it's based on everything I do is based on, I created my coaching program around my life experience. That it just means that much to me, like the vision of the foundation is really connected to the things that I've observed. That's what's driving that. So it's very personal. And even when I say, now, like I have chills. So it's a driving force. Like there is an energy behind it. It's not, just because, it would look cool or whatever. It's not from an external validation stance. It's very internally driven. So what do you want? And then why do you want that?
And how do you differentiate those two? Like, let's say somebody is listening to this and they're like, yeah, I kind of have an idea, but they have trouble to differentiate between, okay, what is really an internally driven, what is kind of something that's really moving me? They might not be able to feel that even, right? Like I've been in touch, or I've worked with people where they I mean, we all have that in certain areas, I guess, where there is like an emotional blindness, like you just can't go there, or like your mind, like you said, the mind turns on and you can't connect to the heart because the mind is very loud and it's kind of blocking you from accessing that. But what would you say to people? How do they, and you mentioned one way to do that is to do it with another person, right? To sit down and they ask you and you have to respond to that, and it's a more spontaneous thing, right? You're not like, don't give your mind so much time maybe to interject.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that might help people with doing that and with connecting more with and also differentiating? Because when you said that this vision that you have, that's very much, that's giving you chills, right? So there's an emotional impact on you, which is probably is my interpretation, going to drive you. Whereas if that were just some goal you write down because you found it online and it sounds cool and it's, like external validation, or maybe it's something somebody said and you just want to imitate them, that would be different. So what do you have on that?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. And it took me a long time. So let me just be very transparent. I am a very analytical person. I'm the person who was choosing to think I'm not good in math who became an accountant, okay? So lie number one.
That's how I'm gonna sell the podcast.
Yeah, seriously. But because I'm so analytical, the hardest thing for me on my journey has been dropping into my heart and even when you hear about like visualize, I used to get so frustrated. I'm like, fuck, I can't visualize. Sorry, I swore. I can't visualize, like I don't see, and they say like we see in pictures. I'm like, I don't see any pictures. Like I used to get so frustrated because I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, it's not, I don't. I will tell you that it's probably in the last 2 years where I start to see things in pictures.
Wow.
And so it took me a long time. And that's why I think, when you hear repetition, can't freaking get around repetition. Like even if you look at because again, fitness is such an easy thing, right? You can go, and I think you might have even done a reel about that. It's consistency, right? It's commitment and being consistent. So I'll get a lot further with my fitness in 10 hours a day, 10 minutes a day, pardon me, if I commit to it for every day or 5 times a week, even if it's 10 minutes a day versus if I do it once a month for 9 hours, right? So the repetition is key in everything we do. So it's like choose the thing that matters to you, that drives you somewhere, that you have an emotional connection, and you have a much higher chance of keeping up with the repetition. So, because again, if it's external to you or you're doing it for some external reason, and you'll quickly know because you're just going to give up, there is no pull. Like there is nothing pulling you forward. You know, only your internal kind of guidance can pull you forward. And it takes a hot minute. Like it's not something that, I mean, unless somebody is like super, I think people who are very creative have a easier time with this because they're already tuned in, like their right brain dominant. So they have an easier time connecting to those parts of themselves. People who are very analytical, I mean, for me, it was a struggle bus straight up, like, and I needed support. And that was the source of my biggest frustration when I started in business full time. Oh my God, what's my message? Oh, I'm not clear. Oh, like it was just like I was spinning in my own stuff. And again, that's where hiring somebody to be like, hey, you know, and give me a different perspective and point me in the direction of like, okay, explore this. Let's talk about this. That kept me, you know, stopped me from also spinning the drain. Like we all do it. We all do it. So have compassion with yourselves. I guess that's, you know, that's always the biggest message is like nothing is broken, nothing needs fixing, and have a lot of compassion for yourself. But not compassion from like, I'm giving myself grace and it's been a decade and I've been on this couch giving myself grace, because that also doesn't work. So it's like, have compassion with yourself, but move. Like, what's important to you? What do you want? You know, it always goes back to that. What do you want? And keep asking yourself. And sometimes you have to walk around the house or go for a walk and just be like, what do I want? What do I want? I do it. People probably think I'm crazy, you know, but we need to open the flow, and only through asking a question, the answer will come. So I know I'm talking a lot right now, but it's flowing. Sometimes being in a question is more beneficial than getting the answer. When you're staying with the question, you're in the space of curiosity and stuff will come to you. So again, don't judge the answers that come. Just keep asking the question and something else will come and something else will come. And eventually the thing that like, that's it will show itself.
So the way this lands with me is when I zoom out and when I look at, okay, let's look at maybe the way people's life usually goes. Like you are born into a family, you get, like you said, you get some conditioning from your parents, from the people that you're in touch with, then it continues to go to school, you have certain role, and kindergarten before school, of course, unless you're growing very quickly, I guess. And there are certain expectations on you, like the society, the whole net of society. There is like a certain way to do things, certain expectations, certain, I don't want to call it indoctrination because I think that's a negative word, but there's just some patterns that are happening. So, and then people might end up at a place where they're fulfilling a role really well, like that might be a job, but they notice, okay, something's off here. And then you're saying a way to connect, and how I understood it, to connect to what you want, which is actually when you can connect to something that you want and where you have a vision or a goal that you're, like you said, that is giving you chills, then that will actually keep you going and not like start this project and then you go do something else because there's not this pull or this motivation there from a deeper level. And you say that and an example you gave is just staying in the space of that question, what do I want? Even if, you know, that might seem weird if you walk around and you ask yourself, okay, what do I want? What do I want? And that being more beneficial than having the answer, because it puts you in a place of curiosity. And I think what this can do is help you to connect with that part of you that actually knows what you want, that you haven't been connecting with because you were so connected to the roles you had to fulfill, the external expectations, and your programming.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Very good summary. I love it.
No, yeah, and I love what you shared. Thank you. So one thing that's big for me that I like to focus on is habits. because
Hmm.
that was always a passion of mine. And I'm just curious, if you look at your life, do you have any habits, especially in the business or entrepreneurial context, that you think are success habits that have helped you to shape your success or that you deem are very important and impactful that you would like to share?
Yeah, so absolutely that, and I think that they're just habits that have been in place for me. So
Hmm.
um, I'm definitely working on developing some new habits on the entrepreneurial journey, but the biggest habits for me have been around health and self-care,
Mm.
because again, without health you have nothing. That's my belief anyway. So I don't know, we were not recording it, I don't think, when you and I chatted about this, so like 4 a.m. club, 5 a.m. club. I don't subscribe to any of those theories at all. What I subscribe to is minimum 7 hours of sleep, and
Hmm.
and daily exercise, fresh air. Um, because those things are commitments and they're non-negotiables, and they have been for a long time, those habits have helped me really strengthen the muscle of follow through and commitment and keeping my word. I think that's really the biggest thing, is keeping my word to myself and following through on the things that I know are important, whether I feel like it or not.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I like that. So it has a deeper impact apart from just getting the minimum sleep, which is, I mean, good,
Hmm.
and then the exercise, but you say it also affects you in terms of maybe the trust that you have in yourself by doing
Hmm.
that, or
For
how would you
sure.
say that? Yeah, keeping your
Yeah,
word.
yeah, it builds confidence, builds trust. It's like I know, um I didn't realize this, but it's something that I've heard now from clients and from friends. And I took it as a huge compliment, because again, it's, we don't see our blind spots in many areas, and we don't even see our greatness sometimes. That's why we need people to like reveal our greatness,
Mhm.
not just to reveal things that don't work for us, but to reveal both. Because again, depending on how you were grew up, like for me, accepting praise was very difficult. I would rather receive criticism. I knew how to handle that because I was
Mhm.
always criticized. So I was like, that was easy. But if somebody said something nice, all of a sudden I was like, "Ah," a puddle of tears, and I didn't know what to do with it. It was so foreign, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and so, what I hear from people is that they know when I say yes, it's a yes. When I say no, it's a no. They trust my yeses and my nos. And so, that's developed through these habits. And so that's trust in myself. And again, like I'm a very integral person. It's one of my top values, integrity is. And so yes, like that's really, supports our confidence that we can show up, even when things are not perfect. Right. But it's just having
Mhm.
the courage to step into it and trust that you can handle whatever comes on the other side of it.
Do you have any kind of last advice that you would give to somebody starting out in business, and with the context of this being the Thriving Solopreneur podcast, or somebody who's on the business journey, that you would kind of a nugget that you would give them?
Yeah, I think so. If you're starting out and you still have a corporate job, I think that's really smart. I think that's really smart. What I would say to this group of people is that if you really have a pull on your heart to step into something that's your own and create a business, go fast. Invest and go fast. Like if it's really on your heart, I feel like I should have been in business like 10 years ago, honestly. But because my job was so good, and again, I was playing in this space of like, do I not do it? You know what I mean? Like it's just I didn't commit. And I think when we still have an income coming in from a job, it really can support, like use it as an investment in your business. Like it's such a huge opportunity to invest that and grow your business. And then have a really nice exit where you're like you have a solid foundation. I did not do that. I was dabbling until it was like it got cut off, and then it was like, "Ugh, now we got to figure it out." So if you're that person that now you're just starting, I find a mentor, find a business coach, and get a strategy and go all in on one strategy. Because what I'm seeing is a lot of entrepreneurs who are starting out are just trying a million things because there are so many strategies. It's hard to know what to follow. So find a mentor who is successful in their strategy and follow the strategy. You can diversify later, but you really want to focus. I think the word focus is coming to me right now. It's like we get to be single focused on something that works and trust your coaching. So I have this rule with myself. I know if I'm I'm investing $30,000 this year with my coach, I'm listening. I'm not taking the chance of this not working for me. I see it working for other people, so I know it's gonna work, right? And I think when all the information is on YouTube, of course, it's free, but the thing is, you're not gonna get a focus that will move you forward quickly. And then it's easy to get discouraged. And nothing breaks my heart more than seeing people who have a big vision, who have a big passion, who can create tremendous difference in the world. And they get discouraged because all of a sudden, they can't pay their bills. And so now they're going back to a job that they are not thriving in. So yeah, trust yourself and invest and find a single focus. Find somebody you trust and just freaking go for it. Because yeah.
Uh, I think that's a beautiful way to wrap up. How can people find you if somebody was listening to this and they're like, "Hey, Kasia is pretty cool. She sometimes swears, but but
Yeah.
I really love her energy. I'd love to explore more. But what do you have for us?
I
Where can
kept it
people
pretty
go?"
clean. Kept it pretty clean to the end. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Coach Kasia Bradford. So I mostly nurture my community through my email list and the events that I offer that way. And we hold a lot of free events and workshops throughout the year. But the easiest way for you to connect with me is through Instagram, and then I can direct you in any other direction. If you want to have a conversation, we can chat there for sure.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I took a lot of notes. It was very interesting, and I'm feeling very inspired.
Awesome.
I
Thank
love
you
it.
so much, Lucas. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming, Kasia.
Yeah.
Have a great day. It's morning for you,
Thank
right? It should be
Yes.
9 a.m. right now or
Yeah,
something.
9 a.m.
Brilliant. Enjoy. Take care, Kasia.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.